A gorilla is said to be doing well after being delivered by a rare emergency cesarean operation at Bristol Zoo. She was born early after her mother showed symptoms of the potentially life-threatening condition preeclampsia. Weighing just over a kilo, she needed help to breathe initially, but is now breathing by herself following what doctors say was a very challenging operation. Let's talk more about this. Joining me live from central London is Ian Redmond, the chairman of the conservation group, the Gorilla Organisation. A very good afternoon to you, Ian. Well, what a heartening operation. Very rare, as I say. Have you heard of this happening with gorillas before?
There have been a few cases elsewhere. It's a first for Bristol Zoo. And it's surprising, really, because gorillas, because they walk on all fours, they have a very open pelvis. And their babies are much smaller than human babies with a smaller head, so the birth canal you can almost walk through. There's not the trauma involved in a mother gorilla giving birth than there is for a human. So I'm sure it was discussed at great length before they took the decision to deliver the baby by cesarean. And I'm glad that both mother and baby are doing well.
Well, this must have been about just getting the baby out as quickly as possible. Preeclampsia, as we know, in humans, and presumably it's similar in gorillas, is life-threatening to the unborn fetus.
Yes, and we basically need all the gorillas we can get because their numbers in the wild have declined by probably 95% over the past century. And curiously, after the story about the Ebola patient, gorillas are also affected by Ebola, but mainly by humans hunting them and destroying their habitat. And curiously, I was in Bristol Zoo a few days ago debating with them the role of zoos in conservation, because whilst every birth is a cause for celebration, you have to ask yourself, well, what does this baby have ahead of it? And if it remains in captivity, it's got a lifetime in a yard not much bigger than the average garden. And that's not much of a life for an intelligent social mammal, and particularly one that plays such an important role in the ecology of Africa's forests, because gorillas disperse more seeds and are more important for the regeneration of trees than almost any other animal except for elephants. So really, gorilla conservation needs to be focused in the wild. And I don't know whether Bristol will consider it, but the Aspinall Foundation are putting gorillas back into the wild to replace the lost gorillas in the forests as part of their conservation work. And that, I think, is where we need to look for the future of gorilla conservation. OK,
well, that's very, very interesting what you're saying there. I mean, tell me more about the conversation with Bristol Zoo. I mean, it's a conversation for all zoos, isn't it, where the line has to be drawn between conservation and exhibition, I suppose.
Yes, it was a debate in front of students from the University of West of England, and I was interested to learn from Christoph Sitcher, the head of conservation science at Bristol, that he's calculated that about 7% of their annual turnover is spent on field conservation, in situ conservation, and about 7% on ex situ conservation, but the other 86% is spent on maintaining a facility which essentially is a nice day out for the kids. And many people would question whether that's the best use of conservation money. Of course, the zoo would say, well, that money wouldn't be available and we're actually creating new revenue for conservation. But given the importance of Africa's tropical forests in climate change, in climate stability, we need those forests, and therefore we need the seed dispersal agents for the next generation of trees to absorb the carbon and keep our climate stable. So gorillas are much more important than just a cute story of a baby being given a cesarean at a zoo. It's part of our future planning for the stability of our climate and therefore for life on Earth.
This is such a fascinating conversation, as you said there. We've gone from the story of this very cute gorilla, and she really is cute, into these great global problems. One last question on it. I think we are running out of time, but I must get your view on it. I mean, isn't it also the fact that these seed dispersal agents, aka gorillas, could be in terrible danger if they go back to their natural habitats with habitat destruction and, of course, them being hunted?
Indeed, and that's why it's critically important that when the UK and other developed world governments commit millions of dollars for forest conservation in the tropics, they should be conserving the animals as well as the trees, because without the animals there won't be any trees in the future except for the ones that are dispersed by wind, and they tend to have light wood which doesn't hold so much carbon. So it really is important that people understand gorillas are not just ornaments, they're essential to the health of the forest, and the forest is essential to the health of the biosphere where we all live.
Well, it's been fascinating talking to you. I hope we can continue this conversation at some later stage. But for the time being, we have to wrap it all up there. Very good talking to you, Mr. Redmond, Ian Redmond there from the Gorilla Organisation.